Alright gang, since we only had one video for the online students last week when the other one was lost, and since that was an introductory video, what I want to go ahead and do is another really short video, tide us over until Thursday. I don't want to get in the habit of only doing one a week. That's not going to be the case, but since we had the campus shut down this week, then, well, so it is. So we're going to do a short video. I'm going to say some things about the homework that we've been doing or that we're going to be doing. Let's go ahead and start. So, well, we're looking at my geeky Mac here rather than a PC. Same difference. I'm going to go ahead and launch idle. Going to go ahead and launch idle. So what I'm going to do here is, there's all sorts of ways to start things. I'm just going to use a little magnifying glass for the Mac users. You PC users don't care. Alright, so when I launch idle, it should come up in the shell. What is the shell? Shell is a place where you can type in Python commands and get immediate responses. Like if you did this, and don't do this, just watch for a moment. A equals 3. B equals 4. And then you say print parentheses A plus B. It says 7. Okay. So I'm not writing a program. I'm just issuing commands and it's telling, it's doing them immediately. It's kind of like, I have an assistant cook and I'm telling the cook what to do, right? I say, okay, break 2 eggs, do this, add this amount of flour. I'm telling them what to do step by step, and the cook's responding immediately. But a program is like a recipe where I write down all the instructions and then I hand it to the cook and the cook goes off and does it without my participation anymore. That's what a program is. A program's just a recipe. It's a series of steps. So your homework was to do some simple math, and it relied on doing some input and output. So we're going to demonstrate that again. So what I'm going to do is File, New, and I think I'm going to call this Lecture C. Well, I guess I could call it Lecture B Part 3, since it's kind of a sequel to the last week's one. How about B.5, right? It's halfway between B and C. Okay. So what I always want you to do is put some information up at the top, with your name, lecture name, or if it's homework, you could put homework 3 or whatever up at the top, and you might put a description. In this case, the description is just going to be demonstration of input, calculation, and output. So to get input, it's a 3-step process. You got to print a message, you got to let them type it in, and then you have to convert it to a number. So to do that, I'm going to show you how to do it in 3 steps. Print, parentheses, quote, what is the value of A, question mark, end quote, in parentheses. Right, and then when I run that, I need to save it. So when I run it, it's going to ask me if I want to save it. I'm going to call it Lecture B5. Get it going. Okay, it asked me for A, but it didn't really give me a chance to type it in, right? If I type in something, it'll do it, but doesn't do anything with the value. So now we need to get our input. Wonder if I can increase the font size a little bit. Hopefully that's a little bit easier to read. Could probably be larger still. See what I'm doing. Options, configure idle. So you can change the font size yourself. Alright, that's a little bit better. Okay, now I need to get the input and store it in a variable. So I'm going to do A equals, notice I did uppercase and lowercase here. Maybe I'll make this uppercase here just to match. So A is equal to input, parentheses in parentheses. And I'm going to put inside the parentheses a quote, angle, quote greater than quote, just to show them where to type. And I know I did this in the last one, but I'm just going to repeat it. I'm just going to make the comments one more time. That lets them know where to type. You don't have to do that. You could leave off the stuff here, and it would work, right? Now that I deleted the quote greater than quote, it works just fine. But I like having the greater than sign there. Okay, now I still can't do any math with it until it is converted to a number. Let me show you what I mean. What if I ask for a second number, right? Print, parentheses, quote, what is the value of B, question mark, end quote, in parentheses. And then I did B is equal to input. Space it out, make it a little bit easier to read. Now I'm going to add those two things together and store the result in a new variable called C. C equals A plus B. Print C. I could even print something fancier like, the answer is or the result is. So why not? Before that C, inside the quote, print, parentheses, quote, the result is, or the result of A plus B equals, end quote, comma C, like that. And you don't have to put these extra spaces here. I'm just putting them there to make real sure it's real easy to see. The comma goes outside the quote. All right, so now when I run it, the program's not going to crash, thankfully, but it's not going to do what we want. What's the value of A? 20. What's the value of B? 30. The result of A plus B equals 20, 30. Absolutely not what I wanted to see. I want, 20 plus 30 to be 50. What is it doing? Well, when the input comes in from the keyboard, it's not a number. It's just a series of characters known as a string. Each keyboard press corresponds to a character. So, I need to convert that character input into a number so math can be done. So underneath those input statements, I'm going to do this. A equals float, parentheses, A, in parentheses. And again, you don't need to add all these spaces. They're just there because I think it makes it easier to read. Oh, look at that. I said I was going to put that greater than sign, and then I didn't. All right, I'm modifying my input statement to have the quote greater than quote there. You can certainly leave that off. Quote greater than quote on that B as well. So I did A is equal to float A right here. Now I'm going to do B is equal to float, parentheses, B right here. And then we still calculate the result here, and then we display the result. So we could add comments explaining what this part of this does. Right, the first thing is get the input, or get the values of A plus B. And then calculate C, right? And then lastly, print the results. The comments just indicate, for the human eyes, what the code that follows is supposed to do. Now these 3 lines here could be shortened into 1 line if you wanted to do that. And I'll show you how. I could do that like this. And then certainly if you've taken Python before and you already know what I'm doing here, then you may appreciate seeing the shorter version of it. It's probably how you've already been doing it. And for people who this is new, you might like being able to type this command in 1 line rather than 3. But you still have to do the same thing. You have to display the message, you have to let them type it in, and then you have to convert it to a number for math. Okay, so we're going to ask for more input. Ask the user for X. So X equals float, parentheses, quote, what is the value of X, question mark. Again, I'm going to give them a greater than sign to type in, so I'm just going to hit the space bar a couple times and then do the greater than, end quote, in parentheses, in parentheses. Notice I needed 2 parentheses. I goofed this up. I'm going to rewind all that to make it very easy to show what I'm typing. Sorry, we could just do an insert and type in a little bit. But float, parentheses, input, parentheses, quote, what is the value of X, question mark, space, space, greater than, end quote, in parentheses, in parentheses. Why did I need two closing parentheses? I needed two closing parentheses because, so I needed the two closed parentheses because you always have to have the same. If you have two open parentheses, somewhere in the same line there'd better be two closed parentheses. Just like a mathematical formula. If you have an opening quote, you better have a closing quote. If you leave off a closing parentheses, it'll be a syntax error. If you leave off a closing quote, it'll be a syntax error. So it just has to be pretty, they have to be matched. And again, you don't need to put these spaces there. I'm putting them there to make it easy to read. I have a parentheses there before the word input, a parentheses there after the word input, and then a quote and a message, and an end quote, and two end parentheses. Now that did in one line what these three statements did in three. Now we can perform another calculation. Calculate x squared. All right, let's do that. Y equals, I keep getting confused about whether I'm going to do uppercase and lowercase. I guess since I did A and B as uppercase, that's going to be a capital X there. And I'll do capital Y here. All right, Y is equal to X times X because I said calculate X squared. And then I can print the result. Print the result. Print parentheses quote x squared equals end quote comma y. End parentheses. So like I said, this is doing all three things in one step. If you feel like doing your input like that, writing, a more complex code, right? It's longer, but it's got everything in it, right? It's got the message that's being displayed, just like that. It's got the input statement, and then it's got the float statement. So technically what's happening is it's calling the input function, and the input function is returning a value that is then being fed into the float function. And I wonder if y'all can hear my cat in the background. So let's run this, see how it works. All right, what's the value of A? It's 6. What's the value of B? It's 7. So what's the value of X? I don't know, it's 12. X squared equals 144.0. Okay, so itty bitty little demonstration. Want to make sure that everybody has the idea that we use a print function for output, we use the input function for input, we use the float command to turn it into a number. Hopefully we're good to go. Now, as far as questions about the textbook MindTap, I have not assigned any due dates yet. So, let me go take a look at it.